We are here in San Antonio, Brian. You got here on Monday. We're here with the team arriving, went back home to spend a little time with family. So it's been a whirlwind for you. I got in on Christmas Eve, was able to see the team have their team day at SeaWorld. And then we joined forces back here at the Alamo Dome today. Good to be back in this building.
Yeah, it is good to be back. And, right behind us here was press conference day earlier. And, it was good to see the practice earlier, see them for the arrival and their practice over at UTSA on Tuesday, I believe it was. I remember 2016 when they practiced at Incarnate Word, and the UTSA facility, really high level. I mean, it was a nice facility. The home of Owen McCown. I don't know if he built it, but home of Owen McCown. But yeah, the players are really complimentary of that facility, and really kind of a cool campus as I was driving around it. And so, the Buffs have gotten a lot of work in so far this week, and we had a chance to talk to several of the players and both coordinators today, and so it's good. How was SeaWorld? We went out there in 2016, I remember Trent Headley, the linebacker, trying the dolphin food. Anybody try the dolphin food?
Nobody tried the dolphin food this time. It was a little bit different. When we were at SeaWorld back in 2016, it was just some injured guys, and the team was actually practicing at the same time. This year, they rolled up with both BYU and Colorado players were in the park, and there's so many families around from staff members, and so it was they kind of took over the park yesterday, and so I did kind of hang around the area of the players swimming with the dolphins, and Ben Finiseth is just hilarious, and just watching those guys interact was a lot of fun, and then. Seeing Coach Prime's skills there, I don't know if you got a chance to see, but he won a stuffy on his first try, both on the basket toss and the basketball, where the other guys were having a hard time. So Coach Prime has still got it.
He still got it, and yeah, that's impressive. I don't know what he would have done with a stuffy, but that's a cool thing to win on Christmas, right?
Well, yeah, no, I mean he picked out a Pikachu. You got to find a place for Pikachu in the house now. But today's press conference, there's a lot to dive into. I know we're both going to be working late, kind of going through all the transcripts of everything. Let's start with the coordinators, and Pat Shurmur, who goes from not being a grandfather at the beginning of this month to being, I don't know, the granddaddy of them all. I mean, he's got 3 grandkids within the span of like a week and a half.
Yeah, he was telling us there at the end. It was just kind of a sort of a oh by the way comment. It was like, yeah, I'm a grandfather 3 times over, and he, like the 2nd, the 6th, the 8th, or something like that. All 3 of his kids had kids this month, and he hasn't seen any of them yet. And so he said as soon as this bowl game ends, he's going to go meet them. But that was kind of cool, and you can tell. And I actually had a chance to chat with him after the arrival on Monday night. I just ran into him at the hotel. We were chatting for a little bit, and he has told us several times how he just feels energized by being here, and he reiterated that to me. I wasn't interviewing him or anything, but he really feels a lot younger. Maybe being a grandpa doesn't make him feel that way, but you can just see it. He's really enjoying working with Shurmur and with Travis and these players, and I think he's had a lot of fun being here at Colorado, and certainly being a grandpa adds a little bit more fun to his life as well.
Yeah. He was asked again about the relationship that he has with Shurmur Sanders today, and that was a big part of why he was the guy that Coach Prime looked to when things were not working last season with the first OC they had in Boulder. We've talked a lot about that relationship, but this is just one more opportunity for those guys to work together. And Pat Shurmur said, we're going to miss Shurmur, and it's going to be one of those things that's pretty noticeable when he's gone. He does have some talented guys that have joined them out here in San Antonio that are now practicing with them. But I think at times we got used to how accurate Shurmur Sanders is. Yeah. It's pretty incredible how accurate he is, and no matter how good the guy that replaces him is, that's such a tough player to live up to in that sense.
Yeah, it really is. And Coach Shurmur said, I'm not sure we're going to really appreciate how good he was until he's gone. And I was actually chatting with Tyler Batty from BYU about going against Shurmur, and he's like, well, we got to try to limit his completions. He goes, but he completes like 75%. And so he goes, that's a really high percentage. That makes it really tough. And so that's a tough challenge for BYU's defense, is that they got a pretty good pass defense, but they haven't faced anybody like this that puts the ball on the target as much as Shurmur does. And so I think Buff fans are going to miss him. I think the coaches are going to miss him. The receivers are going to miss him. And he's been so good for the Buffs. And, I asked Shurmur a follow-up on that question about his relationship with Shurmur, and he talked about how much he's learned from all the coordinators, but he said Shurmur is coming at a good time. He gives me that pro mindset and gets me ready for that pro level, and I think they've been good for each other. And opposites in a lot of ways. They come from different generations, things like that, but they've been good for each other.
One of the things that stands out about both these coordinators, and Robert Livingston is this way as well, is that they're not stubborn. Yeah. It's not, this is my scheme and you guys will run it and learn how to run it. Pat Shurmur said that he might love a play, but if Shurmur is not seeing it, they're going to scrap that. And so that's been kind of the theme of the defense as well. And Robert Livingston said next year's defense is going to look different than this year's defense. And so you kind of like the fact that both those guys have allowed the players to have input, the other staff members. There's been a cohesiveness within this program that we haven't seen in a number of years around here.
Yeah, and both of them have been, very open about how much they learn from different things. And, Coach Shurmur said, it was a few weeks ago when we talked to him in Boulder, how, man, I wish I would have known certain things I know now back at my previous job or whatever. And Coach Livingston today told us, he goes, look, when the off season comes, he goes, the first thing I'm going to do is look at Notre Dame because I have so much respect for Al Golden and watch their defense. So these guys are willing to learn and tweak and adapt and things like that. And I think the way that they have given say to the players has been huge. I think that's built a lot of chemistry and a lot of ownership among these players. And we've seen it. He's talked about it before with Shurmur and Travis having that input on offense. And Livingston's mentioned it before that, and all the players have, that on defense, it's a player's defense. And it's like, hey, if you're good at this, that's what you're going to do. If you're not, then you're not going to do that. And so they've been very good at that. And I think that's really helped build some camaraderie among this team.
We were talking about this being Shador's last game at Colorado, and there already being a couple talented new guys in that quarterback room. Julian Lewis, fresh off a state championship game, joins the team, and you've got Caden Salter, who has put up a lot of stats at Liberty, and so that's going to be a fun competition. And you can't forget about Ryan Staub. He's still in this program, and he was – Pat Shurmur was asked about Ryan Staub, and he said they liked what they saw with him, but as long as Shurmur was going to be healthy around here, you weren't going to have an opportunity. Yeah. So I wouldn't completely write him off either. It's going to be fun to watch that competition going into the spring.
Yeah, and if Ryan's here, and we always have to say if, because you never know with the transfer portal era, but if he's here, that's a really good trio of quarterbacks you got to work with. And I think there's a ceiling there for Ryan that we have not seen yet. And I don't know if we're going to see it here or not, but I think that there's probably a lot he's learned and gotten better at this year that we just haven't seen yet because we don't see him on game day. And so I think as long as you got all three of those guys in the spring, even if it's only two of them, I think the quarterback room is in good shape.
Yeah. With Robert Livingston, was there anything that stood out to you? He always uses that basketball analogy of getting shooters shots, and that's something that he's been very consistent with, but they've backed it up on the field. Linebacker is going to be a little bit tricky for him in this football game, and it would be a great story if Brendan Gant does get the start and he goes out there and has a monster game, because this is somebody that was a really good football player at Florida State earlier in his career and just had to deal with knee injuries coming in here to Colorado.
Yeah, and I would actually expect Brendan Gant to get the start, but I think we're going to see Jalen Wester and we're going to see Jeremiah Brown as well. I think that'll be a little bit of a rotation, but it'd be great to see Gant have a nice game. He had a pretty good game against Oklahoma State, but he's a guy that he's battled some injuries and things like that. With Livingston, one other thing, not about this game, but he mentioned how good he thinks the secondary is going to be even next year. I mean, there's some guys coming back that are really good. Colton Hood and Carter Stoutmeyer, guys like that, and then obviously mentioned in the portal area there's probably some pieces coming in as well. But I think they're setting things up to where this defense, there's some pieces that are coming back next year too. And if you have Robert Livingston here, I think that's a good thing. Now, Pat Shurmur might have given some fans pause a little bit, because Pat Shurmur was talking about Livingston and saying he's going to be a head coach. He goes, I don't know if it's this year or down the road. And whoa, wait a minute. Head coach this year, I don't think Buff fans want to lose Robert Livingston yet. he's clearly on the track to be a head coach at some point. But I think for the Buffs, it'd be great, especially with all this transition, if he can still be here for at least one more year.
The players then came in, and Shurmur at one point had to say, "Hey, my teammates are here. Ask them questions." And so he was asked about playing with the four guys that were up there with him, three receivers and Cam, Selman, Craig, and he gave a great breakdown of all those guys. And that was the thing that when there was a controversy of him going over to the fashion show, and it's like, but the guys in that locker room love Shurmur Sanders, and he's a good teammate. Yeah. That's what matters.
Yeah, and so many of the guys have talked about how they're here because they wanted to play with Shurmur Sanders. And for those that didn't catch it on the press conference, Shurmur left in the middle of it because at one point the media people were like, all right, a couple more questions for Shurmur, then we're going to let him leave so that we can focus on these other guys. And so, they love playing for him, playing with him. And Cam Selman Craig is a guy that's been with him for a number of years, obviously. And those receivers, every one of them came here to play with Shurmur Sanders. And they've all benefited from it. And I know Jimmy Horn has not had the season he wanted to because of injuries. But and LeJounte, he didn't catch 108 balls or whatever it was that he caught at FAU last year. But I would argue he probably had a better year as a receiver this year at Colorado. And Will Shepard, I wrote something about this the other day. He goes from being the number 1 at Vanderbilt to the number 3 at Colorado. He caught the same number of passes this year as he did at Vanderbilt last year, and it's only like 60-some fewer yards. And so he's had almost the same season as the number 3 at Colorado as he has the number 1 at Vanderbilt. And so these guys have benefited from that, and I think they're getting better NFL looks because they played with Shurmur. And it's not just because of that. You're right. I mean, the person he is, everything you hear about Shurmur Sanders is he's a great teammate. Even Pat Shurmur said it. They're like, look, that's another thing is do you guys want to play for him? He's a leader.
And Will Shepard, this is his first bowl game. LeJounte Wester said he played at a bowl game in 2020, but he didn't really count that. And Shurmur and Cam played in some really big games out of Jackson State, but this is the first FBS bowl game for those guys. So
and Jimmy first bowl game.
Jimmy, so it matters to these guys, and you can sense that being out here in San Antonio.
Yeah, and actually, go back and watch Jimmy's answer to that. I asked them all that question. Can you talk about playing in this bowl game? And Jimmy gave a pretty, I don't know, emotional, but for him, an animated answer about how excited he is to be in this bowl game and what it means to him. Because a lot of those guys, I mean, Jimmy's program at USF was not a winning program. And, obviously Will Shepard, Vanderbilt is going to a bowl game this year, but they were not in previous years. And FAU, was not a winning program last year. So a lot of these guys did not come from winning programs. Even Cam and Shurmur, they've won a lot, but they went through a lot of struggles last year with Colorado going 4-8. And so I think when you go through some struggles, I think you appreciate things like this a little bit more. And you can kind of see that out of the guys today.
BYU was in here as well today. They had their coordinators and some players as well. I feel like we should wait on that till we really preview that game tomorrow. But one quick snippet, you were asking these guys if this is kind of a pseudo Big 12 championship game. You got a couple good answers there.
Yeah, the quarterback for BYU, Jake Retzoff, said, I think this is the people's Big 12 title game. And LeJounte Wester, what did he say? He said, well, because you guys all saw that game. He goes, I think we're going to put on a better Big 12 show out here than they got in Arlington. So, I think these guys are excited about it. I think that, and LeJounte mentioned it. Look, for most of the year, BYU was first place in this conference. And with 2 weeks left in the season, it was BYU and CU that were in line to go to that title game, and neither one of them made it. And I think it was Will mentioned, look, we both had to sit back and watch other teams and hope they lost that last weekend. It didn't happen. And so I think they both want this for that reason.
Tomorrow we're going to get a chance to talk to Coach Prime again. We'll preview Colorado's game against BYU. A lot going on the Riverwalk. The team's got a pep rally going on right now, so a lot of fun out here in San Antonio. We'll be back tomorrow.